Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 4 in CE 185. Chef Matthew and I welcome you to another fine live session. Welcome back to sunny Indiana, Chef Matthew. Yeah, sure you're in the lap of luxury running around out there now.
24 degrees and snowing. Yep.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the good news this evening, we are halfway through. Isn't that nice? We have passed the halfway mark. So congratulations, everybody. It feels good to have that little achievement done. So over the next couple of weeks, we just need to make sure that we finish strong. And Chef Matthew brought up a great analogy the other night. And I'll repeat it if I may, Chef Matthew.
Oh, please.
When we close restaurants down in the evening, we do everything we can to leave it set for the next day. And so, you know, your dogs get a little tired there around 9, 10 o'clock at night after you've been running all up and down the line and everything else. And it's hard to keep yourself going, and you have to reach deep to find that motivation, to find that success. And we want to urge you to keep that passion alive, keep this going for the next couple of weeks, because some of you are doing exceptionally well in this class. And we want to help you as much as we can along the way. So keep it alive. How was everybody's Thanksgiving? Yeah? Franklin had 2 thumbs up, so I guess that's a good thing there. I like that. Mary Lou said hers is a little hectic. Did you have the whole base over, Mary Lou? Mary Lou?
I would have rather have the base than my in-laws.
Oh.
You soldiers eat everything. In-laws criticize everything.
Yes, they do. Yep. I know that for sure. Yeah. It's been pointed out to me a couple of times. Yeah. Week 3. How did everybody like week 3? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, thumbs up from Franklin. He's rocking 2 thumbs. Mary Lou was kind of, and Don was kind of. Don, what was your what's your feedback?
Well, in one of my emails to you, or not emails, my text to you and Chef Matthew, it was just asking about real numbers, because I contacted US Foods and created an account with them, and I'm waiting for them to call me up, one of their distributors, so I can actually work with real numbers and, you know, just for the student edification portion side of it. I'm trying to convince them that this is what they should do, is have a portal for, you know, if you're a student and you're trying to learn some things. It's a good marketing thing. I think it's good for the school. What's good for me, I don't know if it's good for the school, but it can lead that way. So once I started doing that, I did a sheet, which Chef Matthew chimed in on in my notes, was I did a cost analysis, production sheet and cost analysis and stuff like that. So I used real products from different websites. It was hard to just come up with fictitious numbers, so I had to find real products somewhere. So I used different vendors and local stuff. So that was just the challenge. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that, you know, that we could use fictitious numbers, but it's like, no, it has to be real. We can't.
Yeah, I think the next time around in the assignment that and Mary Lou's down there, I think you guys are right on the money. And the reason US Foods or Cisco won't release their pricing to anybody is they have many different tiers and levels of pricing, and I think they're afraid. Like in your German shop, you'll pay probably a fairly high dollar, a fairly high tier, whereas a major volume casino will pay an extremely low tier. So they do everything they can to conceal their pricing structures as much as possible, and they do not like being shopped. And shopped is when you call multiple vendors, and so we need to talk about that and kind of figure out a good solution, I think. So those are good comments. I'm glad you brought that up.
When I taught ground classes years ago, we did that, and we had an account with US Foods that we used, but the problem we had is there were students that always changed the password. So the smart aleck student that always wanted to change the password, and then we couldn't figure out why it didn't work, and then we had to call and reset it, and then, you know, it was a problem. It sounds like a great idea, and I wish it would work, but because it would be a good experience. But
it would be. I like that idea.
So why can't you create your own store hypothetically and give that part of the syllabus to say, we're buying it from you. You create it yourself. I mean, it's what we would do instructional. Here's your fictitious store, and here are the prices and values and what they come in and stuff like that. And we're buying it from your class store is what we're doing versus trying to go out and find those numbers. I mean, could it help? Probably.
It's a possibility, yeah, and I think it's something worth exploring, and I think it's a great suggestion. And I'm going to share that to see what kind of feedback we get. Usually, they're really perceptive to those types of suggestions because I think that's a really logical one.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example as to why they don't want to release their pricing. A couple of years ago, I was director of food and beverage at a hotel in Albuquerque, and we were very high volume. We paid right around $1.96, I think it was, for a gallon of milk through U.S. Food Service. And then I switched over to teaching at a ground school here in Tucson. Through that same vendor, we paid almost $5 per gallon of milk. And it's all based on your volume, right? So they have a tendency to be very conscientious about who they release their pricing to.
You can pay $8 a gallon of milk in Hawaii without being
eating one of those, right?
That's local.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Cheaper to buy the cow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments about last week's assignment? Anybody else want to share anything? Chef Matthew, what's your feedback on last week's assignment?
Well, that makes it tough to grade. And the way I looked at it was, I look at it like if you thought it through and you did the work, then I gave you the credit. And if it looked like you just kind of threw some stuff there and pretended like you looked at it, then I took some points off. But otherwise, I mean, if we're working with fictitious numbers, we can't be accurate, so I penalize you for it. So but I think they look pretty good, and it looked like you guys were thinking through what needed to be done with the product. And I figured storage was a little more important than accurate numbers. So storage and temperature.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So the assignments were looking pretty good overall then.
Yeah, they look really, really good.
Good. I like that. I like to hear that. That makes me happy. Yeah. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes this week in week 4. Let's take a quick look at our class page to make sure we're all on the same page real quick here. And I hope everybody gets the opportunity to take a look at this lovely produced video, produced directly here locally in Tucson, Arizona by myself. And it takes almost a clear 10 minutes to put this together. So, I appreciate all the views I can get. And then make sure that you pay attention to the lesson, the menu pricing and cost controls this week. Up here, you want to make sure you read that, go all the way through it, make sure you understand it as well. Suppliers, we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. We just talked a little bit about it. We'll get a little bit more into it. And then reducing cost, which is critical. You have to remember your number one responsibility as a culinarian, as a chef, is to generate profit, right? So money is what we focus on quite a bit in this industry. And then down here is your weekly assignment. We're going to be taking a look at some menu item costs subjectively about the way you feel about it. So that is on the palette. They're on the board this week, so to speak. It's really important. I know I know where a lot of you guys are passionate about culinary arts. You're passionate about food. You're passionate about the slicing and dicing and all that kind of stuff. And that's what it's all about. But at the end of the day, if we cannot generate profit doing what we're doing, then it doesn't make any sense for us to do it. So you really have to really grasp this information and have a good understanding. There's nothing like having somebody on my staff that understands food costs, because you know what? I'm going to stick by that guy, and I'm going to groom that guy. I'm going to raise that guy, because you know what? I know he's after the money, right? And it's not that we're money hungry, it's that we're trying to keep our doors open and survive. So the information is extremely critical. So moving on to cost real quick, and we're going to get into some cool PowerPoints that somebody put together here a little earlier. But a restaurant, when it comes down to cost, restaurants have two primary categories that we focus on, right? One is called fixed, and the other one is called variable. And fixed expenses are things that basically don't change on a monthly basis, right? Your rent, your insurances. We have a category that we generally call A and G. That's administrative and general, and that includes people that are on salary, such as your chef, your sous chef, your restaurant manager, and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to pop up this first slide here so you can take a look at it, kind of help you get a understanding. So basically, you know, if you take a look at these graphs here, the fixed cost will remain steady on a monthly basis. Those are the same bills. Your electric is a relatively fixed expense, and things like your cable TV, those things are generally fixed expenses. However, the other big category that we're primarily concerned with is the variable expense, which you see over here. Variable expenses increase and decrease, or theoretically should increase and decrease according to the volume of your business, right? So if you get very, very busy, you're going to sell a lot more food. So variable expenses would include things like food and things like labor, beverage, disposables, chemicals, some utility cost, things of that nature. Those are what we refer to as controllable expenses. You cannot control your fixed expenses. Your rent is your rent, right? But you have to be able to control and manage your variable expenses. So those are a huge, huge issue in the restaurant industry. So when it comes to controlling expenses, basically, the way it's done in the restaurant industry is we'll do a budget, right? And traditionally, it's a 12-month budget. And that budget is based on historical information or our best educated guess if we don't have the historical education information at hand. So each month, right, we will develop our expenses and then compare it to our budget. Generally, the expenses that are out of line and out of whack are what we call the variable expenses, our labor, our food, everything else. Those are the numbers that you have to manage and work with. You have to remember the average profit in the restaurant industry. Does anybody know what it is on the dollar? Anybody have a wild guess? Huh?
3 times the amount?
3 times the amount. The average profit in the restaurant industry in the United States of America as of 2017 is 10 cents on the dollar, right? So for every dollar we take in, we only make 10 cents in profit. So when it comes to this subject, we take it extremely critical. Food cost. What is food cost? Does anybody know? Anybody have a clue? Okay, food cost is something you are going to hear over and over and over again in your career. It is something that we live and we die by, right? So you have developed a set of recipes, right? And then you've taken those recipes and you've put them into costing sheets, right? 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of butter, et cetera, et cetera. And you figured out how much each recipe is going to cost you to produce. Okay? And that is the cost to produce the recipe. And that's what we refer to that as, or our food cost. So for example, if a hamburger cost you $3.20 to make, right? Put it on the plate, $3.20, and you sell it for $10, right? Your food cost would be 32%. Okay, and that is the number that we manage our restaurants by. Okay, restaurants will work in a very different fashion. We don't work item by item by item. That will drive you crazy. If you have 500 items, 500 feasible combinations of things on your menu, which is not unheard of, you'll go crazy trying to manage each individual item. What we do is at the it's called your ending inventory. That would be the inventory from last month. Right? You go around, you count how much food is on your shelves, right? And then you're going to add that to your purchases. and then you're going to subtract your ending inventory, your ending inventory, right? So you're going to start with your original inventory, add your purchases, and then subtract your ending inventory. And that dollar figure will tell you exactly how much money you spent on food that month. And that is critical. Let's take a look at this screen right here. Is that up there? Are we good? Right? So what I was just explaining to you, the average industry average for food costs can be anywhere from 28 to 32%. Don't get stuck on that. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute. So you're going to start with your opening inventory. That's the inventory that you took last month, right? And then you're going to add your purchases, and then you are going to subtract your closing inventory, and that is going to equal your cost of goods sold, COGS, right? Cost of goods sold is also equates to food cost. That's what it is. Like I was just explaining to you a moment ago, here, the way that we figure out cost on a menu, how much do we charge for a dish, right? Chicken wings, right? If you buy 40 pounds of chicken wings, right, and the case costs you $80, that means that each pound costs you $2, right? Chicken wing plate. If you're serving a pound of chicken wings, it's going to cost you $2 to produce, right? It's going to plus the cost of your sauce and everything else. So the total cost on that plate would be $5, right? Your target food cost is 32%, and you'll take the cost of the plate, divide it by your desired food cost, and then that will give you a rough estimate as to what you should be charging. Okay? You guys are going to get a lot heavier into this once you get into 165. And tonight we just want to give you kind of a little taste. It's like an appetizer of what you're going to be getting into. And I know I'm going kind of quick, and this is a lot of information, but it's very, very important. It's in the restaurant industry, we really don't use dollar figures to talk about food cost or a lot of our other expenses. We generally discuss things in percentages. And the reason we use percentages is they're much more accurate, and then they're also much easier to understand. If I was talking to Don, for example, and I said, hey, Don, you know what, man? Your food cost came in at 40% last month. Right? You're going to have a good understanding right off the top of your bat that, hey, my budget was 32%. I'm 8% over. I've got to do some cost control here. I've got to go back and take a look at what's going on with my operation. But if I went and I said, hey, Chef Matthew, your food cost is 40% this month, or your food cost is $8,332.96 this month. You're like, well, what's my budget? Right? It's variation. You know? So generally in the restaurant industry, you're going to find that we talk about most things in percentages. So kind of get yourself used to that. I always think of everything in a dollar, right? Because it's easiest to break everything down. So I know that industry average for labor, for example, is about 40%. So I know that's 40 cents out of every dollar goes for labor. So it's very simple. Let's talk about this labor issue since we're on that topic real quick. And can everybody see that up there? Am I there, Chef Matthew?
Yep, looks good. Sorry.
All right. Okay. So we're talking about labor. Labor is going to be your largest variable expense in the restaurant industry. Okay. No, I got to stop here real quick, and I want to make sure everybody understands this. Okay. Labor, okay, is not what you pay a cook. Okay. For example, what's a cook make? How much an hour for like a basic entry level cook? $12 an hour? I don't know.
9 to 11, 9 to 12.
Yeah. So for like an entry level, a guy that hasn't gone to school or done anything, it's just basic right off the bat. So that guy thinks he's making $10 an hour. Well, that's not what it costs the restaurant industry, right? We deal with what is called payroll burden. Payroll burden in the United States averages 25%. Okay. So if I'm paying you $10 an hour, it's costing me $12.50 an hour to have you there. Does that make sense? So what you pay somebody and then what you actually dole out is not true, because you have to figure in the cost of workman's comp, insurance, match contributions, and all these other things that we don't take into consideration. Back to our little pie chart here. And it really is a pie chart, isn't it?
That's a pizza pie, my friend.
Pizza pie. This is a good example of some of the expenses that we deal with in the restaurant. All of these are controllable to some degree, okay? Food cost, we know that we can control that. If our profitability is not there, we need to go take a close look at our food cost, right? If our food cost is not according to budget, we're going to talk about some of the things that could be going on, right? Maintenance, right? A lot of things breaking down. Are the cooks beating up my stuff? You know, am I spending too much money on getting stuff fixed? Administrative expenses, you know, that you have people that have to do your books, et cetera, et cetera. Occupancy, utilities, things such as gas, water, et cetera, et cetera. So labor is a huge issue in the restaurant industry. So when somebody comes to you and they say, hey, you know, I want a raise, right? And you give them a raise and it's only $1 an hour raise. And they're like, oh man, only $1 an hour? Well, you got to realize that $1 an hour actually cost you $1.25 an hour, right? And if you have 100 cooks on your staff and you give them all $1 an hour raise, right? That's an additional $125 an hour that you're paying, not just additional $100 an hour. So it's very critical information that you need to take into consideration. Going back to the plate cost, I want to go through this one more time because it's extremely critical that everybody understands exactly what's going on. So when it comes to creating a plate cost, right? Let's say Don is going to be doing schnitzel in his German bistro, right? Great dish. I love to eat it myself. It is not just the schnitzel that you're charging for, right? You have to charge for every single thing, right? Because there's going to be salt, there's going to be pepper on the table, right? You're probably going to serve some type of bread with that schnitzel, right? So you have to figure in the cost of that. That little piece of parsley or that lemon wedge or that other type of garnish, every single type of food that goes onto that plate has to be considered and developed into that. Now that we have our recipe done, we're going to establish a purchase unit and cost for each item. So we talked about that with the chicken wings a little bit. So our purchase unit would be a case, right? 40 pounds. And if we know the cost is $80, we know that we're going to be charging, we're going to pay $2 a pound for the chicken wings, right? 40-pound case, $80, right? And then if we're serving a half a pound of chicken wings on the plate, how much would the plate cost be for the chicken wings? $1, right? And then you're going to figure in the cost of the sauce, and then you're going to figure in the cost of the garnish, right? And then the cost of any additional condiments that you might be serving. If somebody wants additional hot sauce, if somebody wants jalapenos, what about the carrot, the celery, everything else? All that needs to be charged. In the restaurant industry, we get killed by the small things. And it's really hard to understand, right? Hey, I forgot to put the celery sticks on the costing sheet. It's not a big deal. They're only like 5 cents. Well, if you're serving 1,000 orders of wings a month, right, it adds up and it becomes very expensive. And these are the details why so many restaurants go belly up in the first couple of years, is because they do not understand the costing of these items. Now, check this out. I just said the average food cost was what?
28 to 32.
28 to 32% in the United States, right? So don't get stuck on that, because you could end up killing yourself, and that's not smart, right? Okay, most places, generally speaking, will try to have right around a 32% food cost. If you sell a hamburger for $10, at 32%, you're going to put $6.80 in the bank, right? Is that correct? So that's $6.80 is going to cover your other expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but wait a second. Think about this. What happens if I have a prime ribeye steak and I decide to put it on my menu at 50% food cost? The steak costs me $25. The plate costs me $25. I put it on the menu at 50% food cost, and I sell it for $50. Wait a second. That means I put $25 in the bank every time I sell it, right? So does that make sense to everybody? So what I'm getting at is you should work to try to have an average of 32%. Some menu items are going to have high food cost. Some menu items are going to have a lower food cost. For example, in the restaurant industry, when it comes to appetizers and desserts especially, we will run very high food cost. You know why that is? Because it's a lot easier to get you to spend an extra $10 on an appetizer than it is to get you to spend an extra $20 on an appetizer. I'd rather get your $10 and make $3 on it than not get anything at all. So we'll run high food cost on our appetizers and high food cost on our dessert plates, which will balance out with our low food cost items on our menus. That makes sense to everybody? So don't just go and take your menu and do everything at 32%. It's not going to work. You're going to have to finesse it a little bit to get everything to balance out. You want to balance it out right between 28 and 32%. Now, volume plays a huge issue in the way we work our food cost structures, right? Let's take McDonald's, right? They historically run a little bit of a higher food cost. They've got their dollar menu and they've got these other things, but how do they offset it? With volume, right? So, you know, they take that into consideration as well. If you have one item that you have major league volume on it, then you know what? Think about it. That could be what we call a sinker on your menu. And that sinker is that item to get you to buy, right? Hey, that's a great value. I saved money on getting that burger. I think I'm gonna order a shake, right? And the shake is at 10% food cost. So now the balance between the shake and the burger comes out to 32%. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So it's a really interesting game. So when it comes to food cost and how to control that, it can be very, very interesting. Food cost, we deal with a tremendous amount of pilferage in the restaurant industry. Isn't that true, Chef Matthew?
Yeah, a lot of pilferage, a lot of waste, a lot of carelessness, a lot of when I like to talk about food cost, I always like to mention, you know, you set your plate specification with one slice of cheese on a cheeseburger, and the new guy comes in and says, they need more cheese on this burger, and starts putting 2. Well, 500 cheeseburgers later, you go, hey, dude, what are you doing putting 2 slices on there?
Right.
Lost. That's money out. That's gone. You lost it.
Right. Absolutely. That is one form.
Hey, it's Kendall.
That is one form of pilferage that we deal with a lot. Waiters and waitresses are historically bad when it comes to pilfering, and they don't even realize they're doing it. For example, what Chef Matthew just brought up is brilliant. They're working for tips. They want to please that customer, right? So they know the more they give that customer, the more they're going to get a tip, right? So they work it, right? And so they go back to the kitchen. They say, hey, I need a side of jalapenos. And then the guy's okay, gives them a side of jalapenos, but it's never been run through the register system. So they don't charge, but then the customer in return gives them a bigger tip. So that's not a good thing, is it? Have you seen that happen, Chef Matthew?
Yeah, I've seen that happen. I've seen worse things happen. This one restaurant I worked in, the servers used to, like if a big party came in, they'd throw in lunch for themselves because the host of the big party wouldn't notice that there was an extra sandwich or an order of wings or a couple shakes on there. And the servers would be out in the satellite station with it hidden eating it, and they just throw it on the check.
Yeah.
We caught them finally.
Brilliant. Brilliant. All
Yeah.
right, here's the old standby, and I've caught numerous people doing this over the years. The dishwasher at nighttime when they take out the trash. They'll oftentimes go in the walk-in, they'll grab a ribeye, they'll grab a beef tenderloin, something, and they put it into the trash can, and they put the trash on top of the trash can, then they take it out to the dumpster, got to empty the trash, and they take it out to the dumpster, and boom, they stick it underneath the dumpster, and then at the end of the night on the way out to the car, they pick it up, grab it, and take it home, and you've just lost all that money. The most brilliant thing I think I've ever seen, though, in the restaurant industry was a bartender. I had a bartender at a very nice restaurant, always came in every day with a backpack. I don't know, change of clothes, whatever. That's what I always thought, right? But what he was doing, he was bringing in his own bottle of vodka. And it was a brilliant scam because it was the same type that we served, right? And every time he sold a vodka drink, he would use his vodka, he would make it, but he would collect the cash, right? And when we went to inventory the vodka at the end of the night, it's like, whoa, not much going on here, quiet. No, everything's fine, But he was collecting the cash from all the vodka sales. And then finally, we audited the POS system. We noticed, hey, there's like 73 drinks that were sold made with vodka tonight, and the vodka bottle's still the same. So, hey, can you help me? That's something. Pilferage, another thing when it comes to cost control in the restaurant industry for food cost is portioning. Portioning is a huge issue. You have to make sure that your server or your cooks are using scales, portion bags, the proper size scoops, the proper size containers, the proper size plates. Every penny extra that goes onto the plate adds up very quickly. You have to remember, we deal with a lot of volume in the restaurant industry. If you're only doing 100 people a night, that doesn't seem like much, does it? Right? In a restaurant, what's 100 times 30? Right? That's 3,000, man. That's 3,000 meals a month. And if you're putting an extra ounce of French fries on that plate every time it goes out, that's 3,000 ounces. That's a couple of cases of French fries that you just gave away without charging, right? Yeah. We are not in the business of giving food away. So, you really need to get into this pilferage thing. Let's take a quick look at this little video here that talks a little bit about that, I believe, in the restaurant industry.
Talk about an unfortunate issue that has always impacted restaurants and bars: employee theft. Before you think, not my staff, you might be surprised to learn that 75% of employees steal from their employer at least once. And then in the restaurant industry alone, theft totals between $3 and $6 billion every year. Here are some common ways that employees attempt to steal from the restaurant and what you can do to prevent it. Bars and nightclubs know the short ring all too well. Here's a scenario. On a busy night at the bar, a customer orders an $11 martini and pays in cash. The bartender then takes the money for the cocktail and puts it in the register, but rings it into the POS system as a $6 well drink. The customer doesn't know the difference. They were charged the appropriate amount. But at the end of the night, the bartender pockets that $5 difference, and your sales are still in line with your cash and drawer. As the business owner, you'll notice when Grey Goose is flying off the shelves and the sales don't reflect the inventory. But by then, it's probably too late. To avoid the short ring, try implementing a blind closeout process. This requires employees to reconcile cash at the end of their shift without notifying them of the exact amount that they are expected to return. If the bartender has been short ringing all night, it'd be nearly impossible for them to keep a running total of the balance in their head. For some staffers, a freezer full of filet mignon is too much to resist. And bartenders comping a drink or two for their friends every shift can really add up. To prevent this kind of theft, start by locking the freezer and alcohol storage cabinets and only share the keys with a select few trusted employees. Next, if you notice food inventory is dissipating quickly, try changing up your comped meal policy. Offer your staff some more freebies so that they feel appreciated and you can account for the variance. Lastly, consider implementing an inventory management solution. If you're using Toast or thinking about using Toast for your POS system, check out the inventory module. It runs your sales and inventory counts in parallel, giving you quicker and more accurate visibility into your inventory. This scheme requires accuracy and a little bit of luck, but more than a few anonymous bartenders I've talked to have reported seeing this at their restaurants. So a customer comes to the bar and orders a frequently requested beverage, like a Bud Light. The bartender prints the receipt and the customer pays in cash. Now, instead of closing out the tab, the bartender leaves it open. 15 minutes later, a different customer orders a Bud Light. Instead of entering it into the POS as a separate check, the bartender just reprints the first customer's receipt from the still open tab. When the customer pays for their beer, the original check is closed, leaving the cash from that first order unaccounted for and in the pockets of the bartender. To stop this from happening, require that your staff place a receipt in front of guests upon delivery of a drink, so that every party has a receipt in front of them at all times. You can also use your POS data to your advantage. Keep an eye on the average time a tab is open at the bar and which servers are frequently reprinting receipts. There are still plenty of ways that employees steal from restaurants. To read the full list of popular tactics and prevention methods, check out the blog article below. And if you want to prevent this problem before it even starts, by hiring the best staff ever, download Toast's free restaurant staffing guide. It's full of tips to help you hire the best and put systems in place to make employees fast.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay, we don't want Toast. We just want to learn how to stop people from stealing, right? It's and I there's a lot of don't get us wrong. There's a lot of really good people in the restaurant industry, and there's a lot of very positive things. But there is a lot of pilferage that happens, and a lot of times people don't even realize they're doing it, which is the unfortunate thing. It's up to us to have effective inventory control systems in place. For example, liquor, right? How do you inventory liquor? You know, how do you make sure it's accurate? Does anybody know how we do that? Anybody have a clue? Don?
You weigh it.
Weight.
We do it all by weight, right? So we determine, we have inventory systems that we know how much a full 750 bottle of Jack Daniels weighs, and then we know how much a drink should weigh. And we will do spot inventories throughout the night just to check the servers, and then we balance it out against our POS system. For those of you that don't know, a POS system is called point of sale system, and it is something that will track and accumulate all your sales, and if you want to, you can utilize it as an inventory system as well. And that is one of the biggest things. A lot of servers like to serve people, right? They pay in cash, and then they go void the check, right? And then they've got the cash, the check's no longer in the system, so when they reconcile at the end of the night, you know, boom, they're set. Everything's good to go. So we could talk all night long about how people take money out your back door. It's your vigilance, right? What was that, Chef Matthew?
One quick story. I worked at a hotel, and we had a big problem with beverage costs, and we couldn't figure out what the problem was. I think we went through maybe 3 food and beverage directors because of that problem. They eventually got fired, but everything was locked up. It had, you know, security had to unlock a door so that the bartender could unlock a cage, and you know, it was intricate, and they had checks and balances everywhere. But what they failed to recognize was that accounting had champagne toast going into food cost instead of beverage cost.
Mm-hmm.
Champagne toast.
Yeah.
There was a ton of it in the hotel, so it was enough to upset the balance. So
yeah, you have to review your ledgers on a regular basis, man. Every single number that goes through your restaurant, you are responsible for, and you have to figure it out. It's like soda, right? What is soda? Is it a beverage cost?
Mm-hmm.
It's food, right? It's always a food cost, and the reason we do soda is soda's about a 3% food cost item, and it balances out your other high food cost items. But at the same time, we have to control it, because otherwise it gets out of control with the employees. Chef Matthew alluded to the fact that when you go into kitchens, everything is locked up, and that's absolutely true. There's a reason for that. If you want to have a free liberal society in your kitchen, go for it. But then pretty soon, I guarantee you, you're either going to close your doors or you're going to get everything locked up. Because in our walk-in coolers, we have meat cages where the meat is kept under lock and key. Like I talked about, the dishwasher just rolls it out, right? I've had a lot of cooks that go in and they cut themselves off a piece of ribeye for dinner. Yeah. Do you realize if you lose one ribeye, you have to sell 10 more ribeyes just to cover the cost of that ribeye?
Yeah.
Think about it. You know, that sets you back quite a bit. So we keep a very close eye on that type of stuff. Let's move on to our next subject here, which is going to be vendors. Because vendors are a very, very big issue in the restaurant industry. Don brought up some great information at the beginning of the class, which I appreciated. And the reality is, it's almost like buying a used car when it comes to buying food. It's a huge $30 billion a year industry, just the distributors. Between Shamrock and Cisco, Cisco and US, that's about what they're doing on an annual basis. So they take this very, very seriously. If you are a major league, high volume player, it's good to go with a broadline distributor. A broadline distributor would be the company that shows up in a semi twice a week to make your delivery, such as Cisco or US Food Service. They work on contractual obligations with you, and it's kind of a game, right? Depending on how much you order is how much your rebate will be. You know, it's kind of odd. It's not what you buy, it's about how much you buy. Those are called drop size rebates. They also want you to sign an agreement where you're only going to stay in bed with them. You cannot buy from other vendors in order to get their special pricing structure that they've created for you, right? And you know, you don't have to fall for all these games that they do. My recommendation is do your research, right? If you're a smaller place, like a little cafe, ma and pa type place, you might want to consider going with a smaller vendor, someone who is going to deliver to you on a frequent basis, because you're not going to have the storage capacity, right? So really do your research. Mary Lou, what's your question?
My question was, when you were talking earlier, the inventory. Inventory obviously is extremely, extremely important. And would your recommendation be inventory just be done once a month or just twice a month to keep that pretty much check and balances?
That's an awesome question. You have to think about all the food items that are on your shelf as dollar bills. And that's exactly what they are. Every piece of bratwurst in your cooler is money. Money's not in the bank, it's in your cooler, right? So if you have problems with your food cost and your food cost has been historically high, I would do inventory on a weekly basis. I've done inventory on a weekly basis until we get it under control. Or if things are going along just smooth, industry standard would be once a month.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any other questions yet at this point? Anybody? Questions? Chef Matthew, do you have any questions?
Well, I don't. I just think, you know, I totally agree with you. I think you're right on the inventory there. And, you know, monthly is enough. But for ordering purposes, you would have a daily inventory, if not every other day. So you would, as a chef, I mean, first thing I do when I walk in the kitchen is go through every cooler. And I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at dates. I'm looking, you know, and once you start doing that, I don't care how big the kitchen is, you get this photographic memory and you remember everything. And then you go to order something, you go, no, wait a minute, I think we have 2 of those in cooler 62. And you can go double check, and there it is. You know, if somebody walks off with something, or if you have a party, that's why you use those 2 things in cooler number 62. You know, you're going to notice that movement. So daily inventory, I think, is really, really necessary if you're the person who orders.
That's probably one of the greatest tips I've ever heard. You, as a restaurant owner or a chef, every day, the first thing you do and the last thing you do every day is you go through all of your coolers in your storage areas. And the reason for that is you make a lot of discoveries along the way that cost you money, right? Hey, those salmon fillets in there, we got to burn those out, man. I've seen those for 2 days, right? You got to get them in, you got to get them out, you got to take care of them. Shannon, what's your question, man?
So what do we do about small wares inventory, like plates, spoons, knives, because that a lot of that goes in the trash as well. Broken.
Mhm.
Huge. That's what we refer to. You'll hear the term quite a bit. It's called FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment, and small wares. So when they ask you to do a small ware and FF&E inventory, they're asking you to count everything that is in that restaurant.
Yeah.
If you are having a problem with pilferage, right, in your restaurant, you're going to be buying a lot of salt and pepper shakers and spoons and everything else. Then you'll need to start doing regular inventory. Traditionally, in the restaurant industry, that's done on a quarterly basis. But if you are having issues, then you could bump it up to a weekly basis. What I've seen done before to help cut back on the loss of small wares in restaurants is, number one, you can weigh your silverware and your forks and spoons instead of having to count them all, right? Because 20 forks is going to weigh 20 forks, right? And then on the shelf, right, you have to line all the salt and pepper shakers up in a row. And in each row, only 5 will fit. And if I have 4 rows of 5, I know that I have 20. And if I only have 18 in there, then I know, hey, somebody ripped me off again.
Yep.
People will steal everything in a restaurant. Customers, especially when they get intoxicated. Right?
So, like, my point right here is I have, I can't tell you exactly how many people I can set in my restaurant, but we got to have 3 times the amount of silverware per table. So we have, say, 52 4-tops, 8 6-tops, and 12 2-tops. We want to have enough for all of that 3 times over. And
3 turns.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like, to where my hosts or servers don't have to roll any silverware throughout the night, and we want to have enough for that. And then, like, every 2 months, I get down to the point where I'm ordering $350 worth of just silverware alone. Knives, forks, spoons, even app plates, just little things like that.
I'm willing to bet you money, man, it's going in your garbage.
Exactly. And I just want to bring that to a point. Like, that's another big thing that you got to think about.
What we do in the hotel industry when we're having that problem, and what Shannon's alluding to, and this happens a lot. Bussers get busy, servers get busy. They come back, scrape their plates. Man, that fork fell in the garbage. I'll just leave it there. It's only a fork. Boom, that linen napkin, et cetera, et cetera. And that happens a lot. They do make something that goes on top of the garbage can. That's a huge magnet that will magnetic in there. That's a hassle. But what we do in the hotel industry is we'll take a tablecloth and we'll dump the entire contents out of the garbage can onto the tablecloth, a big 6-foot tablecloth, and we'll make the bussers go through that, right? Hey, clean it out, man, right? And after about 3 or 4 nights of them doing that, guess what? Nothing goes in the garbage can anymore because they don't want to be going through the garbage, right? So all of a sudden, I may sound like a jerk, I may sound kind of tough, but I'm dealing with money and I'm running a business here, right? And that's kind of the mentality that you have.
I used to know a guy who worked in Vegas, and he talked about a company. This guy started as a dishwasher and noticed all the silverware going in the garbage and would pick it out regularly. Well, that dishwasher then started his own business of picking silverware out of restaurant trash cans all over Las Vegas. And now he's a millionaire because he would sell it. Really, he would sell it back to the restaurant or casino for half price of what they originally paid. And so if he's picking through their garbage, picks out all their silverware. Hey, I got 600 pieces this week. Here you go. And very smart.
Garbage cans are very expensive. As a matter of fact, when I first started cooking, I went into the kitchen the first day and there's like no garbage cans. And like, what's going on, man? Where's all the garbage cans at? And the chef said, well, I pay for everything, so I prefer to use everything, right? Because garbage cans consume a lot. And so we utilized 100% of the scrap and product. And dishwashers can be very special as well. We were doing a very large banquet one night, and I pissed off the dishwasher because I put a little bit too much pressure on him. And he said, no problem, I'll get everything clean for you. I came in the next day, all the dishes are stacked. He put them all back, everything fine. But didn't wash one of them, right? He just stacked them all, And I love dishwashers. I've been a dishwasher, and I have a lot of respect for them, and I feed them, and I treat them like kings. But sometimes it can be special. Shannon, does that answer your question? Shannon, you good? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Good. Good. Does anybody else have any other questions? Let's wrap this up real quick. We're just going to talk about some other types of cost controls. We talked to some of the things we can do about food. We talked labor is a huge thing, right? We talked about the payroll burden. You know, if you pay somebody $10 an hour with a payroll burden of 25%, you're actually paying them $12.50 an hour, which is a lot of money, and it adds up quickly. You have a lot of people in the restaurant industry that we refer to as being clock cowboys, meaning they like to get on the clock and they like to take it for a ride. That kills you. You need to be very conscientious of when people come in and when they leave, right? I've run into situations before where I had two girls that worked together in the pantry. One came in at 9 and the other one was staggered to come in at 10. And every day I come in the kitchen and the one girl's working, no problem. And then the other girl shows up at 10 o'clock. I'm like, great, okay, we're saving money. But then I look on the time cards and they're both being clocked in at 9 o'clock, right? And because the other girl was punching them both in at the same time. Little things like that are what kills restaurants, right? The guy that shows up to work for his 5 o'clock shift, he comes in the door at 4:58. He punches in, and he goes in the bathroom, and he gets changed, and he goes outside, he has a quick smoke, then he has a cup of coffee, then he's working at 5:30, right? You just lost a half hour, man. You don't pay people to change your clothes, right? You show up to work dressed, ready to work, right? Other things that you can do to save labor, your schedule according to your dollar figures, man. If you know between 5 and 8 o'clock at night, those are your high dollar volume or high dollar hours, schedule accordingly. You know, get them in, get them out. Cross-train your labor in your restaurant. Everybody should be able to work every station, regardless. Don, what's your question, man? Oh, Don.
I see the mute going on and off. Yeah. So when you're talking about the timekeeper portion, I see that a lot too. But when I got off active duty the first time when I was in Germany and I took a job with APHIS, Mary Lou, you might be familiar with them. It's Army Air Force Exchange Services. And my schedule, you had to do 20 hours in Germany to have considered full time to get the ID card to have some benefits. So I would come in, do my 4-hour shifts just spread out throughout the week, but I would do double the time, quadruple the time. And I wouldn't check in, I wouldn't time in, but the manager would call me and say, hey, can you do extra hours? And it's like, sure, I'll cover your shift, because I was so used to working that, hey, work is nothing. This is too easy. So she would compensate me later on by saying, hey, I'm going to have you come in these 4 hours, but after 2 hours, I'm already overloaded. You go home, I'm going to keep you on the clock. So there's a way to compensate for things like that when you see those things, to say, hey, you know what, we're good for today. You're already still in. Why don't you go ahead and go home for the rest of the day? You're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah, you got to send them home. When you don't need them, you get them off your clock. It's critical. People don't realize, if you think about this, right? If I have a staff of 10, right, and everybody on my staff works an hour per week that they really don't need to work, right? Half hour here, half hour there, 15 minutes there. That adds up quickly. That could be up to 10 hours per week, right? 40 hours per month. Right? That's paying one additional employee to work 1 week that does not exist. Right? So, I mean, these are the things that sink restaurants quickly. So you need to be very, very conscientious of your labor. Make sure that when you have somebody that comes into your restaurant, they are working on your clock, right? Do not come in and do trade out with hours and all those other kind of things. Because if they get hurt, guess what? Guess what Workman's Comp is going to take a look at, right? Your time clock. And if it's not there, you're going to be in trouble, right? A couple of other things that you need to be conscientious of as far as controlling costs in restaurants are things like employee meals. We like to feed our staffs, and we want to take care of them. That is technically a taxed benefit, right? You shouldn't be giving anybody anything for free when they work. That's not what the way it works, right? If somebody comes in, you have to be able to get, even if you charge them 10 cents a meal, right? So you're getting something, and you can legally report it to the IRS that it's an actual benefit given to the employee. It really helps reduce your expenses, and it does make a lot of sense in the long run. A big thing too to help you save money in restaurants industry is called dovetailing, right? If you use Bresaola, right, which is a meat from Argentina, very high in protein, make sure you use it on 2 or 3 different plates, right? Don't buy items specifically for one plate. Buy items that you can utilize in different parts. Increases your volume, cuts down on your inventory, less to manage. Isn't that right, Chef Matthew?
Yeah, definitely. And it's when you think about it, you have that one item. What if you don't sell anything of that item for a week? Now you're throwing it away. So, if an 8-ounce fillet that you throw in the trash is not just 8 ounces of meat that you lose, it's a $32 plate you lose. So, it's a lot bigger than just that product.
Yeah. And and tonight, the whole purpose of what we're trying to do tonight is just kind of give you a brief overview of this. And 165, you're going to get into it in detail. But I just hope all of you realize, and it sounds like Shannon's doing some stuff already in the industry, and every penny counts, every dime counts, and it's up to us to manage it and take it very seriously. Let's take a quick look at our assignment this week to make sure we all understand. Our assignment this week, we are going to take a look at 3 different menus. Make sure you read the whole menu, and then you're going to guesstimate as to what you think would be the most expensive item for food costs to prepare on that menu. Okay, and then you're going to have to explain why and give a brief little answer there. It's a real simple exercise. So you're going to pick one of those menus. The guy that put it together, his name is Luke Schaefer. You can tell because it's Cafe Luke, and then catering by Luke as well. So Luke liked his menu items in there. And then you're going to use this template right here to answer the questions. Come on, baby. There you go. So it's quite simple this week. Just choose which item you think is the most expensive one to create with food cost and labor cost both in mind, and then go ahead and submit that. So I think that's pretty black and white this week. Do we have any questions?
So let me just throw this out there. So a hot dog is going to take less labor to produce than homemade wontons. Is that what you're saying, Chef?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Theoretically. Yep. Unless you like slow roast and baste that hot dog or something.
Depends on the country you're in.
Could be, yeah, the hot dog could be imported. Who knows?
Ooh.
Yeah. We import our hot dogs from greater downtown LA. Yeah. I mean, hey, whatever. Yeah. So Mary Lou, what's your question?
So we're using fictitious numbers, right? Don't go down the rabbit hole like I did last week, looking for real numbers.
We want what you think is going to be the most expensive dish to produce.
Okay.
Right? You don't have to provide any numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
No numbers required.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hope everybody, and as always, if you have any questions, make sure you reach out and ask either myself or Chef Matthew. We're both here to help you succeed. If anybody's concerned about your grade at this point in the course, make sure you reach out and get a hold of me so we can try to help you out a little bit. Other than that, great live session. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and I hope everybody has a fantastic week and look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye, everybody.